Dakota.
Okay.
Both of you.
There's your sons?
Grandsons.
Oh, wow. Join the team. We're the cool kids.
I know.
I know. Thank you, sweetie.
At least you're not in a jacket.
Okay. Are we ready, Jen?
Whenever you are.
Okay. Thank you for being here today. My name is Melissa Price-Crom, and I'm the director of the North Carolina Voters for Clean Elections. The purpose of today's press conference is to condemn the North Carolina legislature for calling a special session to try and rig the outcome of an election with more actions that hurt voters that might wind up in front of our courts. This surprise, last-minute deception session where the democratic process was blown to make way for partisan politics was meant to quash the voices of North Carolinians. This is not how a democracy should work.
That's right.
By sweeping in with less than 24 hours notice to rush through controversial bills, legislative leadership hoped to sweep legislation past critics. Unfortunately, this anti-democratic process is the latest attempt from this legislature that seems allergic to acting in good faith. They have made several attempts over the last few years to not only harm voters, but also rig judicial elections. The attacks on judicial elections started with repealing judicial public financing, attempting to cancel the 2016 Supreme Court election for retention elections, rumored attempts to pack the Supreme Court after that election, unpacking the Court of Appeals, moving from nonpartisan judicial elections to partisan judicial elections, judicial gerrymandering, attempts to take away our right to vote for judges in favor of legislative appointment of judges, and when their attempts to rob us of our right to choose judges failed, we were left with a constitutional amendment for legislative appointment of judges in vacancy situations, leading to a potential court packing after the 2018 election. You see, vacancy can mean adding 2 seats to the Supreme Court too. And the legislature can add those seats and keep those judges sat through 2022. And what happens in 2020, y'all? Redistricting. It's a clear scheme to cement their power by gerrymandering North Carolina for another decade. And the people of North Carolina will vote on an amendment that gives them no real information, if not outright misleads voters.
That's right. Teach.
They claim this is merit selection of judges, but merit selection is a defined term and a good government policy. But this legislature has co-opted that term to call legislative appointment of judges a merit selection proposal. It's outright lies.
Lies.
And this legislature has just made it harder to tell voters what's really going on. Instead of a plain language description prepared by a bipartisan commission, each amendment will now include a vague caption and equally confusing ballot language, if not outright wrong language set by lawmakers. Bottom line, North Carolina deserves better. And to add insult to injury, this legislature has also changed the rules of judicial elections in the middle of an election. They claim they are fixing a problem, but let me ask you, would this have happened if the legislature had not tried to rig a judicial election yet again by eliminating the judicial primary and adding partisan labels? No. I doubt. They added party labels and eliminated an election, hoping to game the system, and it came back to haunt them. Now, I've read stuff about how this new law taking off party identification for some who changed parties might cause lawsuits because it was done retroactively, but I'm not a lawyer and we're not here to discuss that. I am a soccer mom, and I can tell you that if the refs changed the rules of the game after my kid had started playing, I'd be madder than a wet hen, and the voters of North Carolina should be too.
Yeah.
I mean, are we going to come back and change the rules again?
Again.
I think we have to question that now. It's hard to see any changes to the court system as anything but more attempts to rig the courts for political purposes. Bottom line, our courts, our judges should be fair and independent and removed from politics.
Yeah.
Next, we will hear from Reverend Dr. T. Anthony Spearman, the president of the North Carolina NAACP, and then we're going to hear from Tomas Lopez, executive director of the North Carolina of Democracy, North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
This is a good day to do the work of justice. Forward together.
Now one step back.
As president of the North Carolina NAACP, I speak on behalf of more than 100 branches and 20,000 members across the state of North Carolina. As a state conference, we say first and foremost, between now and November 6th, we will be leading and participating in a massive Resist in Power, Fight for Democracy and Vote tour. Voter registration drive and get out the vote effort in this state. And we invite all people of goodwill to join us, because no matter what these politicians think, we know that North Carolinians will not let the ballot be used as a blank check to further obstructions, destruction, and corruption. We will not sign away our own rights, the rights of people of color, or the rights of future generations. We will be early voting in October like never before. We will be in the ballot booths on Election Day. And deceptive amendments to our Constitution, a sacred document betrayed this week by an extremist caucus in its efforts to preserve personal power and wealth at the expense of the common good. Reject racism. Respect the Constitution. End rigged elections and annihilate white supremacy. This week, the extremist GOP caucus of the General Assembly convened this body in another infamous special session, and they return again using taxpayers' money today. Let me make it plain. These legislators and the special interests backing them are obsessed with executing a plan to suppress the political power of black folks, Latinos, women, the elderly, people of all races living in poverty, and voters standing up for equal opportunity under the law. Their rule of law is profit, that's P-R-O-F-I-T, over human dignity. The motives are bad, and because the motives are bad, there's nothing elegant about the way that they are going about implementing their schemes. When your motives are bad, you get caught. Democracy's going to catch up to these folk real soon. In 2018, we must resist in power, fight for democracy, and vote. Can you say that with me? Resist in power, fight for democracy, and vote. It is sad but true that today the very announcement of a special session in North Carolina is a red flag that our democracy is being abused. Not content with putting deceptive, discriminatory amendments on the ballot, this General Assembly, afraid that voters might learn what they are voting on, used taxpayers' money this week to reconvene for the express purpose of deceiving voters. We are not deceived. Rewriting our Constitution to add discriminatory photo ID requirement is a threat to justice. Legislators can seek to remove titles, but they cannot erase our memories. In 2018, we must resist in power, fight for democracy, and vote. Y'all repeat that with me. Resist in power.
Resist in power.
Fight for democracy.
Fight for democracy.
And vote.
And vote.
The great lengths to which this caucus has gone to enshrine and illegally protect its own power at the expense of the people and our democratic process is simply quite shameful. First, this caucus used taxpayer money during the regular session in its introduction of House Bill 1092 and other unjustified sham constitutional amendments, and then it doubled down on its efforts this week to cover up what is at stake in the election by decreasing information available to voters forced to vote on discrimination and proper separation of powers between the branches of government and the judiciary. I repeat, in 2018, we must resist in power, fight for democracy, and vote. This election is a time for moral and constitutional revival in the state of North Carolina. The North Carolina NAACP stands up for the Voting Rights Act and the sacred right to vote. We stand up for the hard work by the people of this state and country to end the separate and unequal schooling of our precious children, and for the teachers who walk into classrooms every day, sharing the gifts of a world-class education. We stand for each other and the rights of workers seeking to make living wages to feed families, and for our neighbors' access of good medical care. We stand up for the rights of our immigrant brothers and sisters looking for a better life, for the LGBTQIA community, and all black people in this state who have sacrificed so much as the targets of misplaced hatred and calculated exclusion based solely on the color of our skin. We fight for a government working for the common good. We reject racism. We respect the Constitution. Stand with us, for in 2018, we must resist in power, fight for democracy, and vote. At North Carolina NAACP, we stand for equal protection under the law. And we stand for it on Monday, we stand for it on Tuesday, we stand for it on Wednesday, we stand for it on Thursday, we stand for it on Friday, we stand for it on Saturday, and if we have to, we even stand for it on Sunday. We don't stand for it only at the times that it's most convenient. We're not fair weather friends with our Constitution. The 14th Amendment, which was ratified on July 28, 1868, that's 150 years ago tomorrow, is still the law of the land and the guiding light that our legislators intentionally ignore. This deception and suppression effort will not succeed. We have fought it before, and we will fight it again. We call on all North Carolinians to stand with us as we reject suppression amendments, respect the Constitution, resist in power, fight for our democracy, and vote. We call on the governor to exercise the veto. We call on members of all parties to exercise their conscience, introduce bills that serve the real needs of the people, reject bills to deceive and divide us. In 2018, we must resist in power, fight for democracy, and vote. As a state, we must be and will be an example for the nation and move forward together, not one step back. Oh, and one last thing I want to share with you. I have to take the time to thank, yes, thank this cowardly coup d'etat in advance for its insistence in proving to us that the words of our Honorable Julian Bond are true, that good things don't come to those who wait, they come to those who agitate. Folk across this state are mobilizing like you would not believe. In 2018, we will resist in power. We will fight for democracy, and we will vote. Your suppression sessions, your drastic tactics, and your catastrophe strategy will be your undoing. We, the people, will remember in November. We, the people, will take our resistance to the ballot box, and we will vote. We'll vote you all out of this building behind me, and then we'll come back and we will sacrifice. We will make sacrifices, and we will sanctify this building for the work to come. Because we will prevail, and we will stay here, and we will come back and back again as long as it's needed for us to come back. Because we will fight and resist in power. We will, I say, we will fight back the fact that you are attempting to steal our democracy, and we will vote, and we will win. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Spearman. Thank you, Melissa. I don't know how I can possibly follow that up, but I will. I will do my best. My name is Tomas Lopez. I'm with Democracy North Carolina. We are a statewide movement using field organizing, policy expertise, and advocacy to protect the right to vote, reduce the role of big money in our politics, and fight for fair districts throughout the state. We're here because we want to echo the voices like those of Reverend Spearman, those of Melissa, those of voters around the state, the hundreds upon hundreds who have now signed up and have said this should not be happening. And we want to point out in particular the ways in which this is troubling both in process and in substance. The surprise session was issued with less than 24 hours notice. People showed up here. It was also issued where, when they got here, the deed was done. The legislation was in and out in a single day. This is not the design of what the democracy is supposed to be.
Right.
And in substance, we had rules changes that are messing with the election fewer than 100 days before voters are going to begin casting ballots during early voting.
Shameful.
Now, Melissa, you mentioned that you are a soccer mom, that you know that if the ref changes the rules of the game, that that's not exactly fair. But we also know that this is consistent with a long pattern that we have seen in this state of trying to change the rules to change the outcome of the game. And that one of the fundamental ideas of our democracy is that people are going to participate in it because they believe that it is fair. And so when the democracy is not fair, and then we ask ourselves, why don't people vote? Why don't people care? It is because they do not believe in their leaders and they do not believe in their system.
That's right.
We are here to stand up for this system and for people to be a part of that system as well. This is the third legislative session that we have had this year. The first legislative session happened in January, and in January they came with plans to change the way our courts were run. They came back in May, and they came back in May with a set of constitutional amendments that we're going to have a lot to say about, but that we know at the bottom line that this is about undermining the democracy, changing the rules. And now they came back, the session has come back now, and what this session seems to have been all about is making sure that voters don't have the information they need.
That's right. That's right.
Every citizen in this state deserves to know what they're voting on.
Indeed.
People are going to see a ballot in November. They are going to have choices. And they are not going to understand, they're not going to get to know. Now it is going to be part of our work, and I know the work of everyone who is with us here today to help inform the public. But the fact that we are continuing to see not just these obstructions in terms of the substance of what we are seeing, but the process to hide the ball from voters, we will not stand for that today.
That's
We
right.
will not stand for that in the weeks and months to come, and we will have a lot more to say moving forward. So thank you.
That's right.
And now we will take questions from the press.
You guys think we're gonna have any litigation over all this?
I'm not a lawyer. Next question. All right, thank you everyone for coming out today.
Thank you.